Brian Sarf from Bolton and Mink is with us here today to talk about that.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Pleasure to be here. So we're here to give you an update on our sewer and water extension. As you know, this project has been in progress for quite some time, over a year now at this point. To date, we have prepared plans for the project, submitted all the necessary permits, and awarded a contract to a contractor, Bromling Excavating. At this time, Bromling plans to start construction tomorrow on an item that is not directly related to the sewer extension, but a different part of this project, which is installing a fire hydrant. Last week, we received word from Mr. Reagan that he was looking at other avenues. He felt that getting his own easement in light of what the city has done to this point would make it cheaper for him to connect directly into the sanitary sewer. At which point staff reconvened and essentially decided that we really need to get some more information from Mr. Reagan. We didn't get a decisive answer as to how the city was to move forward at this point. During this process, we had 2 meetings with Mr. Reagan as well as the owners of 800 Parkway. At all those meetings, there was never any indication that there would be an issue obtaining these easements, and we proceeded accordingly. At this juncture, again, we have a contract. Both parties have been unwilling to sign the final easement documents, and we are unable to construct this project as it currently stands without those documents. Are there any, what can I answer to make this, provide some clarity on this?
Did I see Mr. Reagan here?
Yep.
There he is. Is there any additional information that you can give us?
There's quite a bit, actually.
Okay.
Is there any way you can pull up the beacon of the properties, 2 properties, please?
Sure.
So I guess I can just start out. At the first meeting,
let me stop you quick. Why don't we give you your name and address?
Chad Reagan, 804 Parkway Avenue,
Thank you.
Eagle Lake. At the first meeting that we had, that Brian discussed, was actually 3 of the 6 owners were there, not all of them. And it was kind of just a rough draft of what they proposed, where the new line could possibly run. And if I can walk up there and kind of show you guys, it was roughly proposed to kind of come behind the shop, pretty close to the shop, kind of through the backyard, and that was about it. That was, like I said, it was a pretty rough description of where it could be. We kind of discussed on that meeting if we had any other options. The option was, he said he could push it back, and I said, well, if we're going to run a line back there, we'd like to have it probably closer to the railroad tracks. So it takes up, obviously, less property. So at the second meeting, it was proposed, and I had a few other questions at the first meeting that they couldn't answer until they said it was engineered. So at the second meeting, it was proposed. They had it drawn from Bolton and Mink. It was kind of engineered, and the line was coming from basically this manhole that's pre-existing right there. So that would be the starting point, and just kind of following parallel with the railroad tracks is what the line's doing. At that meeting, I was informed that for my property, my house property, at the end of the property, the line would be 8 feet, that they could not go any deeper than the 8-foot mark because of the height or the depth of that sewer line. So, and then that being said, I was also informed that there would be a fire hydrant installed basically in my backyard also. So when I left that meeting, basically all I had for information was the length of the line, where the line was gonna lay, and that you guys wanted the easement for lifelong of the property, 15 feet by the length of both properties, I guess if you wanna say it. At that meeting, I was also informed it was up to me to get my personal bids from that line to my house, the owners of the shop, to get that bid also from the line to the shop hookup. So when I left that meeting, I knew zero cost of what it was gonna cost me personally, what it was gonna take for me personally to hook up. So that's when that was the last meeting we had, those 2 meetings. So then I started talking to my contractors, and my contractors informed me, because I have to travel roughly about 270 feet from my house to that new line, I still have to put in an E1 grinder system. If anybody knows what an E1 grinder system, there are, depending on what one you go with, there are about $10,000 to $20,000 to install an E1 grinder system. And not only the cost, but you also have to, they say replace the grinder pump about every 8 years. You should be on a maintenance program, which it should be done on a monthly basis. And you should also have an alarm system, which is hooked up with the maintenance system. So you have multi-costs, not just putting the pump in there. And I spoke to Pete Forey, and he represented me back in December 6th at the city council meeting, saying that the septic system wouldn't work, so on and so forth. And that he said I needed possibly to install a private pump for the sewer. Well, his thought was, you guys would probably bring in the sewer closer to my house, in the front of my house, like any other city house, that we wouldn't be traveling, getting pretty much 300 feet to hook up. So at the end of the day, where I'm sitting now, is it's gonna cost me the same amount to hook up if I was to go from my house here, through the backyard, curve back around to that line. It's gonna cost me about $2,000 more to do it on my own than it is to hook up to your guys' sewer line. And then there's nobody losing any property over it. Right now, the shop is losing X amount of property, I'm losing X amount of property. So that's why nobody has signed any paperwork to this date, because end of the day, me personally, why do I want to spend roughly $20,000, lose property over the deal, and I still have to have the same investment, I still have to have the E1 grinder system. And a lot of the other contractors I spoke to, their big question was, number one, why do you want a fire hydrant in your backyard? Which I never talked to Brian on that. I don't know why you guys were thinking that, whoever designed that, because obviously there's gonna be no access to any fire trucks, anything in the backyard there. Number two is, the big thing is, everybody's asking me why it's not getting ran around the front. When I measured, it's actually closer if it was to go from here through what's already a right-of-way around the front. Now I only have about a 50-foot hookup there. My water line's already there, so if I ran it around the back, I gotta come all the way through with the water line around my house instead of coming there. And my sewer's right here, so now I only have about a 70-foot hookup with the sewer, along with the body shop. Everything comes out on the side of the body shop, so if you actually measure from here to here, everything's closer for those guys than it is from there to run back there. And the depth of that line, I don't know, we never asked what the depth of the line was for the body shop for sure. My guess is it's probably 6 feet, so they're gonna have to put an E1 grinder system along with us. And I don't know of anybody in city limits in any city that has an E1 grinder system. The only people that I know actually in Blue Earth County doing all the investigation that I did is people Madison Lake, Lake Valentine, Lake Washington, Duck Lake. They all got E1 grinder systems just because they have to pump it so far. With the E1 grinder system, you can pump 900 feet. With a private lift pump, you're pumping roughly 100 feet. Then you're doing the gradual flow. So hopefully that kind of answered your questions why nothing was signed. Because end of the day, it's going to cost me $20,000, and I'm losing land.
So then, moving forward, Brian, is there any option to run it in the front yard?
I suppose there is an option to run it in the front yard. It's gonna be a longer distance to get it through there, and it's gonna be much more expensive to dig it through there, because we're going to have to dig through a paved trail or a paved parking lot. And, yeah, like I said, we can bring it there, but it's going to be further.
It's 400, from right here to right here is 411 feet. That's exactly what it is. From here to there, I believe your line was 300 and some odd feet. From there to me, so basically from my house to this line is a little under 500 feet. And from there to over here was 300 feet. So it's gonna be about another 100 feet for the city. But for both hookups, it's gonna be extremely less. And neither one has to put an E1 grinder system. We can both go with a lift pump of some sort, private pump, that is a gradual flow. And if you run in the front, now you have future expansion to the neighbors. Where if you run it behind, it's basically, the two neighbors already shut you guys down. They don't want to hook up to the line. So my thing is, if it's in the front, it's in the right of way, now you can expand. You don't need no easement from nobody. It makes life a lot easier for everybody involved, even future people involved.
So if we went with that route, we'd have to kind of go back to the drawing board, redesign everything and rebid it out.
Yes,
Um,
Mr. Mayor, you would.
yeah.
You'd have to start the whole process over.
Right.
So the two concerns that the council has to have is
Yeah, and
obviously the timeliness of the project and whether, the cost versus, for the property owner versus the cost for the citizens as a whole, for the city.
Right.
And I guess I'm not comfortable saying that it's conclusive that we have enough depth going this route to serve everyone like this without looking at it. Chad, is your sewer 7 feet deep?
7 feet, yes.
So even then, it's gonna be tight, to say the least.
Yeah, but I would put you'd put a lift pump, so it's coming up at the dirt level, and I'm only traveling 40 feet, 50 feet, so you have the gradual fall.
So you're still putting a lift pump in?
Lift pump, not an E1 grinder, there's two different things.
Is there a reason you can't put a lift pump in?
Lift pumps only travel about 100 feet. That's why you have a E1 grinder system, because it's more of a pressurized system, it's not a gravity-fed system.
Okay, my understanding is that you can lift it and let it fall, lift it to gravity, if that's what we're looking at doing.
Yes, you can, but everybody says 300 feet, no, you're gonna have a problem. And I talked to multi-people, I've done a lot of research on my end. And 2 years ago when I was involved in this, the first thing was the E1 grinder system. I had Boning Brothers Construction out there, they gave me the whole plan. They talked to me all about the E1 grinder system, so I was all up to date on the E1 grinder system. And when this project was started, obviously we didn't know the depth of that main line being only 8 feet. If it was, whatever it could be, 20, 30 feet, then there wouldn't be a big deal. But being 8 feet, when I went back to the contractors and told them the depth of that line, that's when they all said, there's no way. Even when I spoke to Bromlin, when he was at the residence dropping the fire hydrant stuff off last week, I had him walk back there and look at it, and he basically told me the same thing, that I'd have to have an E1 grinder system to travel 300 feet, because that line can only be at 8 feet deep.
So you mentioned, Chad, running behind the body shop with a private line. You're saying that's just the cost of doing that is the same in essence as,
It's about, for me to run all over, it's about $2,000 difference to dig that extra whatever it was, I don't know the exact numbers, let's say 80 feet, 90 feet, than from me to go all the way back. Because basically, I'm going from here to there. With the line, I'm going from here all the way back to there. So that distance there is basically free, so you turn that, because I'm already paying for that, so you turn that, now I just got that little bit to go that way. And it's not only about, I mean, if I had to put a U1 grinder, you know, that's fine, but it's all the maintenance on top of that, monthly, yearly, and now I'm obviously hooked up to city sewer, so now I gotta pay you guys on top of what I'm paying the guys to maintain my U1 grinder system. And then in, you know, 8 years, 10 years, 7 years, now I gotta replace another pump. Where it's like, if I'm in the city, you guys are supposed to be trying to help me out by trying to run me city sewer and water. Well, in my eyes, that's not really helping me out too much if I still have a hefty bill and I'm still paying a monthly maintenance fee to everybody.
Right. Well, Brian, from an engineering perspective, what are our options here if we have a contract in place? Is the contractor, if we were to cancel the contract, typically there's provisions in the contract for them to get paid some portion of whatever their profit would have been on the project if we were to cancel it and it becomes a non-project. Is that?
Mr. Mayor, I know you asked Brian for the answer for this, but I probably am better suited to answer your question. If you cancel the contract, there's likely to be some costs that are gonna be absorbed by the city. You have a contractor that does have incentive to try to work with the city, and that would be able to be used, you know, in this particular matter. But if you were to rebid it out, you have a couple different options you'll have to take a look at, and you will have additional costs for the, you know, obviously for the engineering and everything else. But I would anticipate that we would have some cost and expense with the contractor, that for whatever costs that they have in preparing up until this day.
Yeah, he's got materials all ordered and
Correct.
on site. It sounded like he had a hydrant on
Just
site,
for
or?
So
Fire hydrant, the side project.
at this time, my understanding is that he has the materials that we're gonna proceed with tomorrow, again, unrelated to the private utilities. Beyond that, in talking to the contractor, it didn't sound like there was any major material cost at this time. What exactly that cost is, I'm not sure at this time, but I would say we do have the option to terminate the contract.
So my question is, if that second meeting, when we left that second meeting, it was up to the property owners to get a bid from the new line to the commercial shop to the residential house. How was anything awarded when we were still trying to get bids on our end? Because when we walked out of that second meeting, we had 0 bids. We didn't know if it was gonna cost us $500 or $500,000. So how was something rewarded when we never signed off on any paperwork? We were still determining what we needed to get the job done, cost, so on and so forth. So how was something awarded to a contractor when we never even signed any paperwork?
Because state statute doesn't require that you guys be part of that process, and you're not part of the process.
Okay.
You know, so homeowners or property owners can't hold up a project for the city if they're, you know, doing everything according to statute, you know, based on whether or not they have contracts with it. You know, what city code indicates is as soon as we provide, you know, sewer out to that area, you're required to hook up to it. You know, everything else is kind of left open into the gray area, but there's no requirement that before a project is bid out, that the city has to obtain permission from the property owners that are joining the property.
Well, I understand to get a bid on it, but you guys signed the paperwork with the contractor, so it's not, I mean, in my eyes, that's kind of like building the house before you got the property.
But that's the bidding process. I mean, they let out bids, they awarded the bid. You know, that's the contract that we're speaking of, is just the bid award.
Well, I know there was some discussion by the council of this location in the rear of the property, and it was just kind of a dead end. It would never extend further to the other properties. I know that was kind of one of our sticky points, I guess, from what I recall. You know, that it's not the optimal location, but it was the one that worked.
Yes, if you remember, we did reach out to all the parcels viewed on the screen in front of you to at least entertain the option. Again, during those meetings, as with all of the meetings that we had with the Reagans, there was never any guarantee that a gravity sewer was going to be an option.
Can I ask maybe a speculative question?
Yes.
The property just to the west of Erickson's property, the last property that's shown there, is currently an ag field. If that were developed as housing, where would the proper location for water and sewer be to serve that, in your opinion? The location in front of you was always in mind. There would be some issues that way, only because not only would we have to get easements from the Reagan family, but we'd have to go work through easements through these other properties. Again, that would not be a gravity type service, but at least it could be an outlet for a lift station. You know, we can outlet that. And also we have a full-size water main, so we can certainly serve a certain amount of development on that side of town. Otherwise, really the only other options are coming from south of Parkway Avenue. We do have deep sewer on there, but it's going to be a much larger scale of project, involvement with the county and doing trenchless crossings and That's all of our force main system though, right? On the south side of
yes,
Parkway?
we do have the main force main that goes to Mankato that is in Parkway.
I mean, so if we connected to that, we'd have to have a structure and new pump system there at that connection. I don't know how that works. Yeah, so you just can't tap a T into the force main and.
That's correct. It's not as simple as that. And I wouldn't recommend private connections to the force main either.
Can I comment on something?
Sure.
So, I also own this property here, right here, which is zoned commercial. I would like to build a future shop on that building, but I also do not have any sewer water hookups on that parcel too. So I mean, maybe I'm just thinking out loud, is it somehow possible that we could run something this way, where I could also get a hookup on that parcel, along with the other two parcels that are also owned by us?
I don't know the locations of the utilities in that area.
Off the top of my head, I apologize, I don't know the depths of the sewer. I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, that we cross County Road 17 over here, so there is a little bit of distance that we have to get. Again, involves possibly disturbing the current trail and parking lots to make that work. I don't see the county permitting us to dig into County Road 17 to do any of this, nor do I think that's an economical option for the city at this time. Again, I don't have all of the details in front of me at this time.
I know this has been brought up several times from the front, because I've asked several times, can we go up front? Why aren't we going on the front? I mean, so I know this is nothing new, and I know it's been shot down every time from a cost standpoint. I mean, if we're at 100,000 plus, going the easy route, we're well over 150, 200,000 that the city's fronting and taxpayers are fronting to get water and sewer to two properties. But my frustration in this whole process is I feel like we're always at the very, very end of it, and it's always an emergency situation. You know, we don't hear anything from you until cops are knocking at your door saying, get this fixed, or you're with us. And then you don't want the city water and sewer because you don't want to deal with the city, you want to do your own, nope, can't do my own, city, I need your help. Well, we've had several meetings on this, and now we're at they're starting to dig tomorrow, and here you are again. So I feel like it's always at the very end, it's like, wait, I want to change it, or now I'm in trouble, I need to fix it. Like, it's always our problem when we've had, in my opinion, these meetings several times, and this is the first we're seeing you. When we've had several opportunities for this to be brought up many times, and I feel like the city's being the bad guy in a situation where we're trying to help you, and yet taxpayers are fronting the money for you.
But
And now you're here
I had two
at the very
meetings.
end.
The one being, I think it was July, was the last meeting, private meeting with these guys, not city council. Like I said before, that's when we were informed where the line was going, the depth of the line, so on and so forth. So that's, it'd been different if, you know, your construction guy said it's gonna be X amount of dollars to do this and this and this. But when we have to reach out and see what's gonna take for us to get the job done, to hook up, so on and so forth, that's
Which is
why.
common practice. I mean, at agency, when we did that, we have Mr. Rikus that has to hook up. We didn't tell Mr. Rikus what it was gonna cost, to my understanding. We did our project, Mr. Rikus was to do his project. Same situation here. So I don't see anything different. We never held up projects with agency, we never did anything. So whether I like it in the back or the front, I'm just getting very frustrated in this. It's always at the very end, and I always feel like it's on the city when we've spent a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of meetings that you guys might have had side meetings on, but we've had a lot of meetings from a council standpoint, and you've never been here, where you could have voiced some of your frustration or concerns. or
I was
maybe
at the two meetings, June 7th, when we talked about the septic. Pete Ford was here, June 6th. Those were the only two meetings, and the two private meetings. So those 4 meetings were the only meetings that I knew anything about, anything with septic related, and tonight.
Well, I guess that's my voice of frustration or voice of things, and whether it's right or wrong. I personally, from a taxpayer standpoint, struggle with the whole thing when I think of, as a taxpayer, I'm paying to help get this to 2 properties in amongst the other 3,800 residents that are here. And I mean, not everything benefits us, but I mean, 120,000 if you came and said, now this project's, we're gonna go through the front, if they even can, and it's gonna cost taxpayers 200,000 instead of 110. Or we halt this whole project and wait until next year, when I feel like a year ago it was estimated at 97, and then it was on hold, and now a year later we're at 110, and if we wait another year, what are we gonna be at, 140? You know, its costs are only gonna be going up. If we're halting this, then I'm recommending that we say we're gonna cap it at a certain amount and stop. Because I don't feel the city is holding up this project, and it's only continually costing the city more money and the residents more money. And I feel like we're trying to help you, but we also have a responsibility to our other constituents that are paying for this too, to not have this keep going up in cost. So that's what I would have to say on this.
Brian, I have a question to follow up with Beth's statement. So it says that determined that the city council will grant Mr. Reagan a variance to replace his non-compliant septic system with the understanding that once the new septic reached its end of its useful life, that he would then have to connect to city sewer. So does that mean that he could tomorrow go put a septic system in his backyard?
He tried. It was gonna cost him too much money, am I right?
No, the soil is too compact.
Okay, so it's reached its life several years ago,
Yep.
to my understanding.
No, as far as the septic,
Yes,
yeah, well, yes.
yes.
So I wasn't informed about this until a couple years ago. Supposedly they had a dealing with my dad or whatever it was in the past when he was alive. So when I purchased this house 13 years ago, I knew nothing about the septic.
Right, but you've known about it for several years now.
Yes.
And been on plan for several years now.
Yes. And the reason being is because we looked at different situations. I had Boning Brothers Construction out there. I talked to GM Contracting when they put the water line in there. So it's been an ongoing process, not just from me, from everybody involved in this. And the last of it was we tried to put a septic in there, because that was the last thing that I did want to do, was put a septic, being in city limits, so on and so forth. But because the ground is too compact, and the one place that we thought we could put it, the Blue Earth County guy came out there and we're not far enough away from my neighbor's well. So we couldn't put it in the one place that We thought we could. Pete did what they call soil samples to see the compaction of the soil in the backyard, and nothing would work. So then we actually even called, called Blue Earth County and asked them even about putting a holding tank in there. Well, Blue Earth County, you can't put a holding tank, they got rid of that thing a year and a half ago. So then it was back to the E1 grinder system, and that's where we were. And then you guys proposed that you could possibly put a line in to help me out, but now we're back to the same thing with the E1 grinder system because of where the line has to get ran, the depth of the line, so on and so forth.
And you can't just put an easement, just a 15-foot easement right behind the shed? I'm just wondering, yeah, you could lose some ground either way, they can't do anything that probably saves you a bunch of money, if they just went straight.
Are you not wanting us to go straight because you don't wanna lose and have to get rid of the stuff that's all stored back there?
The
I would
majority of that
assume.
stuff's gone. So the thing is, so what are you gonna do? Okay, right here, you got something you can possibly put up, right? A building, a shed, anything, whatever you wanna do, fence, anything, doghouse, whatever you wanna do. Obviously, if you come straight across here, now I have an easement right there, right? So now I have a little parcel of land and I got a little parcel of land. Who's gonna want to have an easement going right through the middle of their property? I mean, that'd be no different than you living in the city and your neighbor has a problem with his septic and the city comes and says, hey, in your backyard, we're gonna put an easement through there. Why would you put it through the backyard when you can put it through the front yard and it affects nobody?
I can't find my notes on why I know we talked several times, 'cause I know I personally asked about the front yard several times, and I know cost was one. And I think it was the feasibility of the length or something, I don't know, I don't have my notes to be able to say, this is what your answer was, but I know it was discussed several times, and I think that's why I'm frustrated with this whole thing, is it was talked about several times, and yet here we are, the day before construction starting, being asked why we're not doing it again.
Can you say like twice as much, 3 times as much, 5 times as much if we went front compared to back? Like, you know, the price difference? I mean,
I really don't. Finding a route is gonna be a challenge, to be honest. I mean, it's deep sewer. And we essentially have a road right-of-way, and we've got a roundabout that was constructed in the not-too-distant past. Finding a way to get there is going to be a real struggle.
I hate to ask this question, but according to these notes, he could still put a septic system, and I know that the soil was not appropriate in the backyard. Well, couldn't you put the septic in the front yard?
I mean,
No,
there,
it has to be X amount of feet from property line, well, so on and so forth.
yep, there are setbacks that make that
So a septic
challenging.
system is just not an answer, so
No,
according to these notes,
no.
the sewer is the only answer.
Yep, Pete Forey was here, as you'll see in the letter in front of you, and his professional opinion was that the soils in the area where they could fit a septic system were not
We're not
viable for a septic system.
So it sounds like the only thing that we can do is connect to a sewer in the back.
Can I ask a question, if it's all right, Mayor? So Chad, do you have the ability to get an easement from your family? I know that's what we talked about last week.
I don't know for sure. One of the family members had emergency, they couldn't attend the meeting. I don't wanna say yes or no. I could get that answer in the next couple days for sure, but I don't wanna say yes and all of a sudden they come back no, or vice versa, so at this moment, I'm not gonna comment on that 100%.
Well, and I understand that, but I think that's our problem here, is that for the city's perspective, we have to keep this process moving. We can't just hit the pause button and then just as soon as you snap your fingers, be ready to go. I mean, we have to get the contract lined up, and we have been, I think, very accommodating since you came back in 2021 with the septic issue, and the city council was gonna grant a variance. Then that didn't work, and then the city right away went ahead with engineering plans to try to, I think that's where we're coming from. We just it just feels like there's no resolution here. We need to figure this out, cause
So
we just
then-
keep
so
incurring
then
costs.
If that's, if you guys are telling me that's my only option, to hook up is going back by the railroad tracks, then what happens if I come back here to tell you tomorrow that three or four of the family members, they're not gonna give nobody an easement? They're not giving me one, they're not giving the city one.
Then is it the city's problem? I don't know. I don't know.
Then I would say he's on his own. I mean, if we can't get easements, how can the city help?
What else we can do?
And I feel like this is like, I feel like when you came in and talked about the sewer piece, or your septic system, we asked that question, you said, my family's not granting easements. So we've had a year and a half to figure out these easement pieces, and here we are again, the last minute before they're ready to dig, and we still don't have agreements on easements. Well, then it's clear if it's been a year and a half, they're not gonna grant you easements. Then the city
That-
can't help you, you're on your own. I
That's
mean,
correct, because back then, they didn't want no sewer lines going behind the building. That's what they told me a year and a half ago.
Yep.
Stated right here in this letter.
Yep.
But now they're basically to the point like, well, if we gotta give land up, we'd probably rather give land up to you personally than give it up to the city, because you guys have the rights to come and dig anytime. You know what I'm saying?
well, we would have to if we need to fix the lines,
Right.
right?
Well, I
Just
understand
to be
that, but
clear,
that's what
the-
they understand also.
Just to be clear, an easement doesn't give up any land. You're still the owner of the property. Somebody just has the ability to use or to construct something on that property.
It does as far as construction purposes, yes. You can still ride your lawnmower on it and do whatever you want on it, but as far as construction purposes, no, you can't construct anything on it.
That's not necessarily true. It depends on the type of easement that you have. I mean, quite frankly, you go downtown North Mankato, there's gonna be easements that got construction on them for all kinds of, sewer systems and other things of that nature. But I understand what you're saying. What the concern is, in regards to the easement and coming to, once this is put in place, you have legal options of obtaining those easements that don't include the permission of the other property owners. The city may not have those options, but you're not gonna be stuck in a situation where you can't, that you aren't allowed to have a septic and you're not allowed to hook up to the sanitary sewer.
So if you did all private piping from your house off to the east and connected out there, then we wouldn't have to put in a service back there, Brian?
Should you say that one more time?
So if he ran from the back of his house, back behind Chuck's Body Shop, and connected where we've got the circle, water, and sewer, if he connected at that point, privately, then we wouldn't need our service in the back.
That's correct. I would be concerned about,
You'd have a private service crossing another property,
right,
which would have to have an easement. Wouldn't be our easement, but if one of the two property owners sold the property, that would be highly contentious, so,
correct.
but maybe that's the option is we cancel the project, he privately connects out on 598th, and we avoid it all.
That is definitely an option.
But now, in that situation, is that too far for pumping?
No,
Or
'cause-
would that need a
well,
grinder?
Well, if you get the bigger U1 grinder system, you can pump up to 900 feet. So that's like 477 feet or whatever it is. So no, it's not. So that's why on my level, it's gonna cost me almost the same amount to go, because I need the same U1 grinder system virtually to go 300 feet to 477 feet. So if I'm paying for the U1 grinder system, why am I running a line through my backyard?
I think as of tonight, that's the only option he has, because if we don't have easements to start digging tomorrow, we don't have any right to say, keep going. I think at this point, to my understanding, if we don't have an easement, and maybe I'm understanding this wrong, if we don't have an easement, it's not our problem. Well, it is, because we've spent a lot of money with you guys and with the contractor.
If you do not have an easement, you can't enter the other person's property without a court order. And obviously, we need to have the easement there, so we would be stuck with the project to that area that are under the city controller that we have easements for. So I think it's probably saying the same thing, just a little bit different than what you were saying.
Yeah, it feels like we're to that point.
Yeah.
We have to cancel the contract, and you have to come up with a plan to connect to city service at some point.
So how do we make sure with the county that it doesn't come back, I mean, cause he's out of compliance with the county. He's not hooking up to city at this point, right, you know, as of today, tonight. So where he doesn't have it come back to the city saying, well, the city's not allowing me to connect, you know what I mean, like,
Well, I have been in contact with parties that you've been working with, and where we left it was that we were working to get this project going, and so, I mean, we can just say that easements weren't able to be signed, we couldn't move forward, we bid the contract, we awarded the contract, but we can't we can't execute the contract, we don't have the easements, so I don't know how it could come back on the city in that
Yeah,
situation.
I don't think the city has a lot of liability except to the
Okay.
contractor in this particular matter. The county will work with it, the property owner doesn't have a lot of really great options. You know, particularly if the county's not gonna look at the septic, and I know the city had given some discussion previously about whether or not a variance would be appropriate for a septic system, but that's something we'd have to go through planning commission and come back to the council as to whether or not it even meets the requirements for a variance.
I guess I don't know what the proper motion is in this case then. I mean, if the council is hearing everything that I'm hearing, and at this point, it appears that we need to make a motion to cancel the contract with Bromling Construction.
If the council's looking to go forward with the project up until the point where we can't, I think you can make a motion to that degree. It would not be necessarily canceling the contract, but asking that the contract be fulfilled up until the point where we need easements.
If easements aren't granted, then
Then we have no
Then we-
choice, that there's just no, we can't go any further.
is there a certain time period then, or are we like, to where if he says next month, he's granted easements, and then we go back on, I mean, or is it, you know what I mean?
You can put a time period on it, but as to what would be an appropriate time period, it probably needs the discussion of the contractor as to how long and how willing that they are to leave something open. You know, Jennifer was asking kind of the same question. It's not, that's, from my perspective, it's not a legal question, it's more of a practical question. And maybe Brian has the answer, but I don't have the answer to that.
I don't have an exact answer, but I would say the window is probably not very big.
Right, well, that's my concern, is even a day, they're gonna go on to the next project, and now they'll put us on the docket for next year, which is, again, in my mind, gonna cost more money.
Yep, this is not a very large project, so to this point, Mr. Bromling has been very flexible. But at some point, he has to deliver materials to the site and make a schedule for himself. And I would say, I don't know exactly, but the window is closing fairly quick.
Where's the motion that we're not gonna entertain anything but connecting right where it is, and you get there and we'll connect?
yeah, but we have to secure the easements.
Well, we wouldn't have to have an easement if we told him he has to come out to
Oh,
598.
correct.
Right.
That seems like the fallback position if an easement isn't granted. You know, you're gonna have to give us an answer here within a couple days whether what we see on the screen, an easement would be granted for that, so that we can make a determination.
Well, at that second meeting I was at, I was told, October 1st would be the construction date. The stuff had to get moved, be off the premises in the way of the construction was October 1st. That was the date that I was given at the second meeting that I was at. So it's not like when they say he was gonna start digging tomorrow, yes, he's doing his fire hydrant project on, you know, in the ditch, but our project, according to what was said at the second meeting, was October 1st.
Yep, I would concur with that. However, I would add, October 1st is not the date that we can tell him not to come. It has to be before that time.
So that's pretty much the window, right? Between now and a week before October 1st.
Yeah,
Well, I I would even say between now and the end of the week, because I mean, if we're talking 2 weeks from October 1, he's got to get supplies here. If I'm in his shoes, I already have them ordered and coming in, if not on site, or, you know, in his possession. From all the lead times that we've been hearing on how long it takes to get stuff in, I'd be concerned if he didn't have it on order or in hands.
So then we could craft a motion that says if easement is not obtained within this week, then we cancel the contract?
Mr. Mayor, when you say cancel the contract, you're just talking the portion that involves hooking it up to the property, or are you talking about the entire project?
Well, but for this project, do we need the hydrant?
The hydrant that's planned to be constructed tomorrow was an added piece of this contract because we were in the vicinity. I would recommend that we construct
We
the
continue,
hydrant.
we continue with that,
Yes,
but so then we look at, and maybe not saying cancel the contract, but request a gigantic credit change order for work that we're not going to proceed with.
correct. I think it'd really be more of a change order.
And typically, when you get into change orders that are over a certain percentage of the project, then it becomes kind of, I don't know if there's any legal issue with a $100,000 project and we want a $90,000 credit.
It's probably not the preferred way of doing it because unique circumstances here, I don't think we're gonna have a problem. Because again, the project has been we've got an agreement, we're not going through with the project, we don't have easements to continue the project at that point, and I think that's where the big factor is gonna be going forward.
Okay. So then I would look for a motion from the council to set a timeline of September 16th to obtain easements for the project. And if not, then we work towards a reduction of the scope of the project. And it sounds like you've had some conversations with Bromling, and they kind of understand where we're at, and they're being flexible, so
Yep, at this time they are.
we can
Yep.
tell them we're very appreciative of that. And
Yes, absolutely.
anyone wishing to make a motion along those lines?
I'll make a motion to what you mentioned.
Obtain easement by September 15th?
Correct. Or reduce by that amount of that part of the project.
All right, so we have a motion on the table to make sure that an easement is secured by the end of this week, September 15th, or if not, then we would reduce the project by the water and sewer lines shown on. I got the wrong date? You're correct, the 16th. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? And that carries. Then let us know what you find out as quickly as we can so we can take appropriate action and see what the next steps are.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Moving on now, we do have a public hearing, and you'll note that there's a memo on the table in front of you in regard to compensation of the mayor and council members. So this discussion needs to occur prior to any election if a change in the compensation for council members is going to be approved. Does anyone have any questions before I open a public hearing? Jennifer, do you have any information you want to present before the public hearing, or?
Sure. So So I apologize, I missed it on the agenda after I sent out the information, I realized it, but just to clarify, we did send out, notice to the newspaper for legal publication notification purposes, of the public hearing. But basically, the public hearing is scheduled, for this evening for you to consider possibly amending section 2.020 of city code. And that deals with the compensation of the mayor and council members. Right now, the current compensation for the mayor is $325 per month and $225 per month for the city council. Special city council meetings are payable at $50 per meeting. And then also attached to the memo in front of you is just a summary of some survey findings from some other cities. And it just lists the population, mayor, council compensation, special meeting pay, and then the number of meetings per month. And I think when we reviewed this last month, the council was just kind of looking at how much each, when you factor the different number of meetings per month. But I just think it's important that the council look at this, given the last increase was in 2013. And it's important that we continue to be able to attract people to want to serve on the city council. And that's all I have.
All right. Well, then at this time, I'll open a public hearing. And so what the council is going to be discussing tonight is whether or not we make a change to the compensation for the city council and the mayor. Anyone wishing to speak on the topic tonight? Anyone wishing to speak? One last time. Anyone wishing to speak? And then I'll close the public hearing. Well, council, then we don't have any feedback from the public. You've got the chart on the back of the table. Again, as Jennifer said, the last time this was done was 2013. We seem to be right in line kind of with other communities of our size and even larger. So I don't know if anyone has had any thoughts on this over the last month or so.
I have one thought with regards to meetings. I would really like to see us doing 2 meetings a month with the compensation package. Because I'm looking at these other communities, we have, not that I'm having an attention span that's not that long, but I think that with the amount of stuff going on, I think that 2 meetings a month, it looks as though pretty much all the other communities are doing that around us, minus Mapleton, and they're significantly smaller in population. So I had thought about this a little bit, and my thought was that you move to 2 meetings per month and sort of go off of what Byron does, do $300 a month for the 2 meetings for the council, and do $400 a month for mayor. And that would then eliminate the need for an extra meeting in most cases for each month. Just in my time on the council, I think that there's so much important details that get covered at one meeting, and by the time, just speaking on my own behalf, by the time it's 9 o'clock, I'm ready, mentally tapped with there's a lot of information. That just might just be me, but I think there's a lot of important stuff, and I don't want to be making a rash decision on an important issue at 9 o'clock just because we're exhausted from a day of work and then a long meeting. So that would be my 2 cents after looking at this table.
I know we have talked about 2 meetings a month in the past. We would just kind of ride out the 1 meeting a month, just to see what our workload was. I don't know if that changes things on staff's perspectives.
It could get a little bit tricky because we have the planning commission meeting, the 3rd Monday of the month. But then we also, I'm salaried, so it doesn't cost the city anything to have me come to meetings, but for other staff, we do have to pay overtime. So every time a staff is at a meeting, we would be paying, you know, not just once a month, but twice a month. Unless you pick certain meetings that you're not requiring staff to come to.
What does Janesville, Madison Lake, Fairmont, Blue Earth, Byron, and Lake Crystal do every month when they have 2 meetings a month? Do they have the police at every meeting? Do they have the public works at every meeting?
I can't
don't
speak for all of them, I can speak for Janesville and Lake Crystal, but the police is at all the meetings, but that's a contract with their chief. But in Janesville, the chief is there for our one, they usually have staff, and they have staff reports for every meeting.
The staff are at every meeting?
Staff, yes, there's staff reports at every meeting, so what you have for your general council meeting, what they would have twice a month for their council meetings. And typically they go about the same, you know, what they have less of is less of the, you know, the additional meetings, and the ones that come up in between where you guys have more, and then you get to argue whether that's better or worse. Outside of Jennifer, probably the biggest concern for having an additional meeting would be the additional comp time that you have to provide for other employees. My guess is with Jennifer, with comp time, it's pretty much zeroing out versus the special meetings and what you would have for that second meeting. So for, you know, at least where we've been for the last couple of years, because you've had more special meetings, I think, than any other council I'm aware of for, you know, the last 2 years.
Yeah, it just, that's why I bring that up. It just seems to make more sense with all the special meetings that we have and then getting them to be scheduled. It would be better if it was just on the schedule and you have that second meeting, and if there happens to not be information that needs to be discussed at the second meeting of the month, you wouldn't have as long of a council meeting on, say, the first Monday of the month. And with the addition of other staff as far as with the new budget session too, I mean, what else is gonna be happening? And I think there's gonna be more projects happening and other things that will need to be discussed. I mean, it's a moot point because we've already had 2 meetings a month for the past, I'll just say the past year. I know that's not the case, but it really is a moot point to not have 2 meetings a month. I mean, I hate to say that, but I mean, that's really where we're at.
In regards to attendance, obviously the council could determine how much you want for staff, or if you need staff reports every meeting, or whether or not they'd be there. You'd have the city clerk, you'd have the city administrator at every meeting. And generally speaking, you have somebody for the police, if nothing else for crowd control, but, you know, so we'll see that, but you can look at everything else. I mean, the benefit is obviously that you know, the public theoretically knows that you're having a meeting twice a month, and they'll know what the agenda is and what you're looking at. The drawback with not having special meetings is that you're addressing a full calendar each time, not necessarily just addressing one particular issue or narrowing those issues, which sometimes could be a benefit.
Tim, has the city ever done 2 city council meetings a month in your time, or has it always been 1
Not a scheduled 2 meetings a month, no.
besides special?
We've had special meetings just as needed, but no, we have not.
I think from my standpoint, until we get some more help on board, creating the packet for a board meeting and the time it takes to gather up things I used to have a board meeting weekly, and basically 3 days out of that week, you were preparing for the board meeting, so you really didn't get a lot done. And the special meetings are single or two agenda items, so they're a little bit smaller. But, you know, I think it might be good to move there, but once we get, you know, potentially some other help on board, so Jennifer doesn't spend 80% of her time, you know, preparing for board meetings.
Does 2 meetings a month, does that take an ordinance change? I think is how we have that set up.
I don't know the answer to that. You know, this was not an issue that I was prepared for.
No, I understand.
My guess is it probably does, because typically, but in looking at the ordinance, what I want to take a look at, sometimes it just says that you're required to have 1 meeting per month, and at the beginning of the year, that the council can determine what the dates are going to be for any other meetings.
Right. I mean, so that can really be changed in essence at any time with a month or 2 notice.
I would have to take a look at your ordinance as to how much you'd have to do on that.
Just if just quick pulled up our code. And it does say that the regular meetings of the city council shall be held on the first Monday of each calendar month at 6 PM. So it doesn't, I don't know if that makes a difference as far as.
Well, I don't think we necessarily have to determine that immediately.
Yeah, you would have to determine it immediately, but the ordinance does not appear like it have to be changed. You have to have one meeting per month. It doesn't prohibit you from having multiple meetings per month.
You missed the public hearing.
Just from an outsider's point of view, I can see where you want to lower your workload per meeting, but I think the special meetings are special meetings because it's some major thing that's meant to be dealt with. And I think if you go and you just lop special meetings into a bi-weekly meeting,
Well, there could still be special meetings even with 2 council meetings a month.
right, but I think what Garrett was trying to get at. and
Just
I may be
eliminating it.
wrong, But it seemed like he was trying to get away from the special
Yep.
meetings.
Both and, I think it would just like, let's say that there was a topic that needed to be discussed on or around September 20th, and let's say that the Monday of the other meeting of the month would be on September 18th, and you'd just have that closest special meeting be on that date. But if there was a special meeting that, you know, required a large amount of people that would be attending, such as like a public forum, I think that you would probably want to have a special meeting for it, especially if you know that it's going to be drawing a lot of people or comments or things
Mhm.
like that. I think it's kind of a both and, like you said, Mike. It could potentially help eliminate special meetings, but I think that it would also create flexibility with the schedule a little bit.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if you guys are looking at changing and going to 2 meetings, I do think you probably, well, you wouldn't have to. I think making a change to the ordinance would make sense, because the part that I would be most concerned about is the current language that would indicate that if any regular meeting falls on a holiday, that you're scheduling it to the next Monday. So you may end up having meetings 2 Mondays in a row, and then having a longer period of time where most cities that have multiple meetings would have that special, or have the holiday meeting fall on Tuesday.
I don't know if this answers our pay question or not, but I don't know if it was John that said it or not, but I worry more on just the time it takes right now, under our current staffing, for Jennifer to get it all together, because it's not uncommon, but not uncommon for things to come in last minute, and, I mean, the week gets by and all of a sudden it's Friday or Thursday and we have a meeting next week or something. So I would worry more on the additional workload that it would put on Jennifer, who is already short-staffed with the projects that are going on, 1, and 2, then we're in an election year, people coming in, that are, you two and then the 2 others that are assuming it's once a month meeting plus your time outside of that, but is this something that just then we approve the price, or we table the whole thing until January when we get all the newbies in and get the new council set, hopefully start looking at new people, or what we do that way? But those would be my 2 comments on it. The wages to me don't seem,
Wouldn't the idea be that you would get it in place now and that it would take place in January 1st, whether it wouldn't matter about what the new council is? I mean, you would talk about it now, and then it would be instituted in January of 2023. And the fact of having too much workload to make a city council packet meeting wouldn't matter, because at that point, wouldn't there be, if we follow the budget proposal for 2023, there would be that other staff person.
whenever they get hired.
Whenever they get hired, but conceivably they're gonna be, conceivably,
Right.
assuming that that's gonna be in the budget.
It'll be in the budget, it's just when they compare
But
it.
then
Jennifer,
again,
my
also,
question
if you
for
have-
you is, how long, we have a meeting tonight. How long does it take on an average month to put the packet together?
So, I should be spending a lot more time than I do on it. I don't get to spend 3 days on it. It's usually the day of, because there's so many other things, and I usually end up staying late or doing it outside of normal working hours because there just isn't enough time.
So to
there's
add
no
another
breathing-
meeting in there.
There's just no breathing room right now.
Right, so to add another meeting in there, would that be less stressful because now you're taking one meeting and being able to spread it amongst two? Or would that be more stressful because now we get to pack more stuff? I mean, what I don't want it to be,
yeah.
all of a sudden we get 2 meetings and we're still having 3-hour meetings twice a month instead of
I
once
think
a
it's
month.
like the divide the load and then add half of it back on. So I mean, if the whole thing takes like a lot of work right now, I think you would divide it in half and then add a little bit more to it, you know? I mean, each week it would take cumulatively less time, but it would be divided with time, you know?
I've worked in cities where we've had multiple meetings a month, and then you're just doing it times 2, because then
Okay.
more items are gonna come up.
So
I was gonna say-
so that cumulative little thing that I was saying there doesn't work.
I think the 2 meetings a month, I think are, just from a staff perspective, our city's big enough, and I absolutely agree that it would be good. It's just gonna be an adjustment, and I do appreciate the comments about staff time, because I do worry about Carrie, and I have the brunt of the stuff, because Carrie's gonna have an extra set of minutes, and the bills and all that stuff.
Yeah, and
so.
again, I know about that, and I hear what everyone's saying, but the point, what I'm saying is that this is for 2023, when the budget would already have in place more staff. That's what we've been talking about.
Right, but the budget does, but that doesn't mean there is. And that's what
I
you
know
gotta
that-
say, is
I-
maybe we say this has to wait until we get staff in the building. I'm not opposed to twice a month. I mean, we already do park board and this.
Well,
and
that's like the
planning
chicken
commission.
versus,
Three times a month
that's
right
like the,
now, but-
what happened first, the chicken or the egg hatched, you know? I mean, so something's gonna happen. It would be good to, at least have a little discussion about it to see.
The meeting times and the ordinance can be changed at any time, so you can do that in the middle of the year or whenever you want to. The salary issue either needs to be done before the election or will not take effect until 2024, because you have to have an election pass before it goes into effect.
So if we said just per se, nothing changed on this, and then we said in February, hey, we wanna change it to 2 meetings a month.
You could do that at any time, because you're
But
just
then the
changing the
budget,
ordinance.
how do you adjust the, like,
There's
The
then
compensation.
you just have 2 meetings for the same pay as 1 meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
The pay for salary for the council would remain the same.
Okay,
Yeah, so I think maybe what we can do is, it would be interesting to have staff give an estimation of how much time 2 meetings a month would take, for the prep. And we could revisit this, maybe after January 1st or something, when the new council is placed, and have that discussion whether we move to 2 meetings a month. Start to do a little bit of research and find out what that would look like. But for tonight, if we're anticipating 2 meetings, if we want to do some sort of adjustment, what does that look like? So Garrett said 400 a month for mayor and 300 a month for council. Is that appropriate? I mean, that puts us kind of at the high end, I think, of some of the communities. Any other thoughts? And I don't know that, I guess in my opinion, I don't know that anyone wishing to serve on the council is swayed by the dollar amount.
I was just gonna say that, it's like, we don't, to me, it doesn't, the pay really doesn't matter. I mean, if it stayed the same rate, just as long as it doesn't go up.
But that's why I bring the 2 meetings up a month thing.
I agree with Anthony, I don't care on pay, I probably more, not that I care about 2 meetings a month, I care more probably on the 2 meetings a month from a staff standpoint and having kids, and if, next week I'll be at planning commission, and then we'll be at park board, and then, so if Jennifer's taking 3 meetings a month plus after hours, that makes it tough. So if we're looking at the budget in thought of changing it in 2023, that's where some of my hesitation comes in, is just having personal life for staff after hours and not having meetings twice a week, every week throughout the whole month. But from a cost of where we're at now, I don't,
It'd be interesting to see where we are at with all the special meetings we've been having, where we are, as
council does not have to make a decision on this tonight. You probably need to make a decision if you want to do it for or after the election, at the next meeting. Though even technically you'll have your November meeting will probably be before the election, it'll be the day before, I think, or a week before, and I think that would be a challenge, or at least open to challenge, so. The statute requires it before ahead of time, but I think the purpose of the statute is that if people are upset about you giving raises to yourself, that they can vote you out of office. And that we kind of effectively get rid of that.
Yeah, and you could, my main thing here is the meeting amount. I mean, I could say the same thing and just keep the money exactly the way it is, but I still think there should be 2 meetings a month. I mean, if people are gonna be saying there's too many meetings a month, well then don't run for council. It's as easy as that. I mean, you could win $200 going playing charitable gambling for our fire department up at the Eagles Nest if you want the money. I just, yeah, so with regards to this, the riser of the schedule of pay, I mean, I think that's important, but I think the more important thing is that time is also money. And if we're sitting here for 4 hours let's say 4 times a year, or all these special extra meetings, we're still having to pay staff to come in for extra special meetings. Again, like I said before, it's a moot point. It's almost the perfect example of a moot point in the dictionary.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with going to 2. I think we just need the staff to do it.
Right.
So, would I enjoy, under 350 pages to review, and do that in more of a chunks, because my attention span is like that, that might work. But I think what you'll see is we expand into the space we're given. So if we have 2 meetings, we're gonna have 2, after a while, we're gonna have 2 4-hour meetings instead of, 1 4-hour meeting. So we just have to, it's a balance, right? No, and definitely as we move forward, we got Fox Meadows, we got a bunch of planning and zoning things we wanna do, we need some other things updated that we've talked about with the new hires that will have to be, brought to the council and reviewed. So there'll be a lot more work, once we get more staff, there'll be a lot more work that comes to the council too. Because there'll be more things get completed, so.
The one meeting I would like to see split back, and Mayor talked about it, was the budget meeting. That meeting gets long, because there's a lot of numbers running through heads and stuff. So, I mean, if, that's one, but.
Well,
We used to do it every week in August.
Yeah, the budget meeting would then, wouldn't you think the budget meeting would be split up amongst all the other meetings then eventually? Perhaps. It doesn't have to be.
Generally
but
speaking, the budget, we do them as planning sessions
the session.
instead of having them in meetings, because the council's not taking any actual action on it. And have kind of a work session to try to work with it, so you can do that. But that is something very typical for a lot of cities where they have 2 or 3 work sessions, between July, August.
To develop the budget.
Sometimes they start in May, and just to kind of talk about what the budget's gonna be, have city staff or department heads come in and speak about what they think that they need and give the council some kind of ideas without being a formal council meeting.
All right, let's pull it back to compensation for the council. If we are to hold this off for another month, do we have to have another public hearing?
No, you're required to have one public hearing, so
Okay.
you can push, basically continue this to the next, council meeting and then make a decision at that point.
So, taking the number of meetings per month out of the equation, is there dollar figures that anyone would like to make motion on tonight, or we want to hold off on this and give it some more thought? And bring it back to the next meeting?
What additional information will we have to give more thought to? If we
Like I
would.
said, I would like to know, with all the special meetings we've had, where we are with our salary, and then that way we can kind of justify where to increase or stay the same.
think we can pull that together pretty quickly.
Oh, we get it out tomorrow. Yep.
Anyone wishing to make a motion tonight?
Mr. Mayor, just to be safe, you may have, somebody should probably make a motion to table this until the first meeting in October, or at the meeting in October.
I'll make a motion to table it till the first meeting of October.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. Now you see what you just did there? Now we're gonna have a 4-hour meeting next time.
You're right, I did.
All right, moving on to new business. The first item is hazardous buildings report from the building inspector for the Eagle Lake Regency Mobile Home Park, beginning on page 264 of the packet.
Mayor and City Council, I can give you some background, and I believe Randy is here in the audience as well to talk, and he, I believe, will try to get Kim Sumney, the park manager, on the, or to connect remotely. But I'll just quick give you a little background, maybe while Randy's getting her connected. All right, so just to reiterate or recap what the mayor said, hazardous buildings report for Regency Manufactured Home Park. The city's building inspector, Dan Murphy, was asked to inspect 11 homes in Eagle Lake Regency Manufactured Home Park. Mr. Murphy provided a report, a copy of which is attached to the council packet, and stated that all 11 homes that were inspected were deemed structurally unsafe per Minnesota rules. And the unsafe homes shall be demolished and placed in a licensed landfill recycling center. When talking with Mr. Murphy, he didn't know an exact number that it would cost to demolish each structure, but he just anticipated approximately $6,000. And he also did caution the city that Regency Manufactured Home Park does not have title to the structures. I did include, just as a reference, a copy of an agreement between Regency and the city back from April of 2015. There was some language in there about referencing vacant homes and the demolition timeline and process. But there was also provision in that agreement that stated it applied to homes within the ownership of Regency, which I'm assuming means they'd have to have title to the manufactured home. So as we just mentioned, Kim is unable to attend tonight in person, but she'll be available remotely. Mr. Murphy was unable to attend the meeting this evening, but he wanted to pass along that he would just recommend or encourage the city to establish a timeline that would be reasonable for Regency to be able to remove the homes, and that just to, encourage open communication. And one of the things that he had cautioned was potential large upfront costs of the city if the city sets a short time frame and the park has difficulty getting them demolished, then the city could potentially be on the hook for those costs right up front. So I will go ahead and maybe turn over to Randy, and he can talk a little bit about what the park has talked about on their end for timeline and what they might be requesting from the city.
Randy Rager, 41, Country Manor Court, Regency of Minnesota. Kim, my boss, can't be here, but I got her on the phone here. So if there's any questions or anything, you can, or she'll ask them.
All right, I
Hello,
guess,
everybody. This is Kim Stumney. I'm the regional manager for Regency of Minnesota, Eagle Lake.
hi Kim.
Hello. Hey, Randy, can you flip your phone the other way? Everybody's upside down.
There you go.
One more. One
What?
more, please. Perfect. Thank you.
No, you're upside down.
Well, Kim, maybe you can give us an update. So from the memo, it sounds like you're trying to work on a timeline to get started. I guess the first thing in my mind is if you don't have title to these homes, can we legally do any demolition?
Yep. We don't have title to any of these homes, and that's been part of the delay. These homes were never owned by Regency, although they're in our community. They were tenant-owned homes. 7 of them were abandoned by, well, actually, there's 11, so 6 of them, sorry, were abandoned by tenants either through the eviction process prior COVID, and then in the last 2 years, the last 5. These were, again, tenant-owned homes. We don't have title. During the moratorium, we couldn't file eviction, we couldn't collect rent. As soon as the moratorium was lifted, all but 1 of those 5 moved out, stuck us with thousands of dollars of past due rent and a home we couldn't tear down. One of the homes is abandoned because the tenant is deceased. So in the cost for these, well, number one, I can't tear them down without a title because they could really come back to me 6 months down the road and say, where's my home? You know, I didn't give you permission to tear it down. That's why I worked with Dan to get the, get him out there so he could look at everything so we could at least get them condemned, because then I don't need a title.
So Dan's inspection helps out on the condemnation proceedings then?
He inspected, Randy, if you could turn up your volume maybe just a little bit, but he inspected all 11 and did condemn them. So now with his paperwork that he sent me, I can start the tear down process. But again, it's a very expensive process. I haven't been able to find any bids on these. They range anywhere from $4,000 to $5,500 per home to tear down. And, with 11 homes, that's, roughly about $55,000. Is there any, and I'll just throw this out there, is there any help that the city can help provide with these tear downs that maybe can help offset some of these costs?
I guess I'm not aware of anything off the top of my head.
On occasion, there's some grant programs that would be put in place. The problem here is that his property is not likely to qualify for any of them because he's 11.
We're looking at a
Homes have
couple
already
of
been condemned.
different options.
Hang on.
Okay.
So most of that talks about revitalization or taking care of, projects before they get to that stage, or trying to do it, but once they've been condemned, it kind of limits any funds that were received from, the state or the feds.
Okay. So we can look for some grants, Kim, but it's probably very unlikely that that kind of assistance is out there.
Okay. Well, and then speaking of like the grants, maybe we can kind of loop back to that. Like I said, we're exploring a couple different options. When I talked to corporate on Friday, I believe it was Friday, if we can have, we're looking to get the first 5 to 6 down within 60 to 90 days. We're just really trying to put together a timeline and make it as cost effective as we possibly can. Like I said, I am looking at a couple of different options. There may be a few that I can haul to the landfill, which would be a little bit cheaper than tearing them down, but they have to have good axles, they have to have tires, and a lot of these homes are, I mean, these obviously aren't any of the nicer homes in the community. They're very old, probably 70s, some of them might be 60s. But I would guess that most of them are older than 1980. So I don't know what kind of, how roadworthy they would be, and if they can't be hauled because of the axles or the tires, then that becomes an in-house tear down, which is again about $5,000. And then we would finish the rest of them in the spring of next year. So 5 or 6 this year and then the balance in the spring. It's pretty difficult for anybody to do these tear downs in the wintertime. It's really, with that type of equipment, it's not the safest or the easiest to do when everything gets cold.
Does the council have any concerns about timeline presented?
Do we have a map on which units these are? Or do we know which units these are? I mean, in my mind, I can hope which units they are when I drive by, but
I can get you a map.
We could come up with that for you, that's no problem. I was just asking John if they had like a tag or a marking or something, but maybe some do, some don't, so.
Some are hard to
Okay. But we can mark on a map and.
So if the plan at this point is to remove 5 to 6 units here within 90 days, that would leave another 5 to 6 units till the spring.
Yep.
Is there a way to make sure that those units have been secured so they can't be?
Yes, we can board them up better, so they are secure, so nobody can get in them.
And I don't know if that's been a problem of
Not
illegal entry
really.
or,
We haven't had, as far as I know, and I haven't received any, complaints. We don't have anybody going in and out or squatting, so to speak, in these homes.
I don't know, John, have you noted anything?
The only thing, I think one of the officers got called over to one of the houses, I wanna say it was 18 maybe, where he saw evidence that people may have been hanging out in there and such, so, and I think they since have taken care of that, but, I know Dan Murphy had mentioned that some of the houses that he went into, they kinda looked like maybe people had been in there.
Mr. Mayor, the park is gonna have a strong interest in sealing those up and preventing people from getting hurt.
Randy, I
Or
couldn't hear
down
what,
the
John
properties.
said.
The city itself
Has he
probably
had
doesn't
any
have much
complaints?
concern regarding liability on that.
Just hang on.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, 60 to 90 days seems reasonable in the sense that we're finally we're getting movement, right? You know, so I guess I was just asking on which units it was in the sense of, you know, obviously first starting with the worst ones that are probably the most dangerous to the community. But then secondly, then trying to hit the ones that are the most noticeable. Ones with toilets sitting on the porches or things like that that are just a big eyesore. So just my curiosity of which units
Sure.
we were discussing, but I'm just happy to see some movement and it's nice to have some understanding on why some of them haven't been taken down immediately. And then if they get abandoned, is there something that we can have in the future so that we don't have 11 units needing to go down at the same time, you know, where we can get some out and get some in, you know, and kind of keep good fluid motion happening.
Well, and Kim, is there still interest in, you know, okay, so if we remove now 11 units, out of the park. I don't know how many vacant lots there are currently. Is there a plan in place or some sort of a?
There is, we are actually bringing in 2 brand-new homes this year. I'm hoping that they're gonna be in, I'm gonna say the middle of October. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, they're 16 by 70, but the box is 66, so 70 includes the hitch. And then, that was the other thing I wanted to discuss and see if there was any type of affordable housing help to kind of to offset some of the setup costs. Our goal is to actually bring in, including these 2 I'm bringing in now, to bring in over the next 15 months, 8 to 10 homes, brand new homes.
And again, the city doesn't have any affordable housing grant dollars or anything currently, but I don't know if we can,
Well,
again, look for anything additional.
I sure can try. I previously reached out to Judge Schultz with MVAC. I've contacted Blue Earth County. I know I've contacted somebody else. I have to go back through emails, but I was not successful in finding anything to help with fixing up units or anything related to Regency. I have tried. I'll go back and I can revisit that for sure. But the other thing too, I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but speaking of bringing in new units, we do have a process in code for bringing new units. So we'll be in touch with Kim just to make sure we're all on the same page and we get all the proper permits pulled.
Any other questions from the council? Well, I think you've given us a good update. We appreciate that, and yeah, look forward to seeing some action here in the next 60 to 90 days, and then.
Yeah, and if anybody goes out to the community, we've already picked out the 2 lots and started prepping them for the new homes. I just emailed Dan today and asked him to go out and take a look at the first 2 sites that we picked. It's lot 50 and lot 99. I just want to make sure that we're placing the homes far enough back and far enough away from the road, so I just wanted him to confirm that. But we can keep you updated on that too. We're always looking for newer used homes that fall within that 20-year guideline that we have, but those are very few and far between. So we just decided it's probably easier to go new.
All
Yeah,
right.
our goal is to, we really want to get the tear downs out. Like I said, that's been hard on us as well. We don't like having those in our community. I wish there was a way to prevent it. A few of the ones that were abandoned prior COVID, those were actually abandoned because the tenants were deceased. And it's hard to work with family members when they don't have power of attorney. So it becomes a difficult situation to get title. I probably could have saved a few of them if I was able to get title. But it's expensive and hard to do when the family isn't cooperating, so.
All right.
Yeah, if you guys ever have anything that you're wondering or need answered, I'm sure Dan and John even would tell you that I always make myself available. I apologize for not being there tonight. It's a 2.5-hour drive one way, and I couldn't cancel the meetings to get on the road in enough time for tonight. But if we have another one, I'll come.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Randy.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. All right, we'll continue on with new business then. Item number 2 is the copier proposal from Loeffler.
Great. Just gonna scroll down here to the right page number. 262, pull that up. Okay. Mayor and City Council, the city currently leases its copier from Metro Sales. Under the current agreement with Metro Sales, unfortunately, there's a cost escalator for black and white and color copies. So depending on our print volume, our monthly cost can vary significantly. And this year we've had the community surveys and some other big things that have gone out. So it's hard to plan budget-wise when you got those cost escalators in there. But just looking at our costs so far, we've averaged about $800 a month, and that, and then I guess moving on, then Kirk Hankins with Loeffler recently reached out with a proposal for a copier that would have all the same features as we currently do, and then also allow us the ability to make unlimited black and white and color copies. The proposal would entail a 60-month agreement at $388 per month. And included with the proposal would be the new copier equipment, delivery, installation, on-site training. They buy out our current lease with Metro Sales and then ship it back to Metro Sales. So we'd basically looking at what they're proposing and what we're spending right now, we probably have immediate cost savings about 50% of our monthly copier lease and printing costs. And our current lease with Metro Sales is set to expire in September of 2023. I did talk to the Metro Sales rep after talking with Loeffler, and I asked if they could match what's being proposed. I didn't really get I didn't get a proposal, and then shortly thereafter the sales rep moved on, and so I asked the same question to the person who reached out and said that the sales rep was no longer there, and I'd never heard back. So I guess at this point, my recommendation would be that we switch to Loeffler. They buy out our lease agreement with Metro Sales or pay it off, satisfy it, whatever, and we start realizing those immediate cost savings. And the good thing about the contract is we're locked in. There's no cost escalator. Toner, maintenance, all that's provided. The only thing that the city would be responsible for is paper. So with that, that'd be my recommendation that we move to go with a proposal from Loeffler as soon as possible.
Questions from the council?
Nope, I
The only
have
reason
not.
why I ask is just they're local from around here, so I just like to support local.
Is Loeffler not?
Well, they have a business here, but they're nationwide.
Oh, got it. Got it.
Not to make more work on you, but they might,
Riverbend just delivered one to the school last week. I don't know if that helps either or not, but I know that they are working with the school. So could it be more of a motion to approve this or the Riverbend one, whichever is a better cost savings and contract for the city? Or does that leave it too open-ended?
No, we've done that in the past. I mean, if we check with Riverbend and if they can do a similar program, that's fine.
Just so it doesn't have to come back to us and then,
Right.
it's kind of a common sense thing. You're saving money, whichever one is the better option for the city.
Is that working? Trying to rotate it.
Any other questions? Now look for a motion on the Loeffler proposal, or if we want to add a Riverbend option to that.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, just to be clear, then the motion is to approve the $388 a month, 60-month lease from Loeffler unless a proposal from Riverbend Business Products can be secured at that or lower. Any other Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. The next item is just a note on the sale of the old leaf vac.
All right. Well, good news, the leaf vac, sold and it came in at I think more than what we were anticipating, which is great. So following the special meeting that was held on August 22nd, the unit was posted on Surplus Services, also known as MinBid, and a high bid came in the amount of $6,550. One thing I just want to note for the minutes is that the sale proceeds, if approved by the council, would be credited back to the 201 Stormwater Fund. There is an administrative fee for the auction. I believe that's 8% of the sales price. So with that, we just need a motion to approve the sale and designate the sale proceeds to the 201 Stormwater Fund.
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. Item number 4 is the electronic funds and wire transfer policy.
Mayor and City Council, attached to the memo with your packet is a proposed electronic funds transfer policy. As you know, more and more electronic banking is taking place, and here at the City of Eagle Lake, we're receiving an uptick in the number of vendors that are requiring electronic payment or at least requesting it. So the purpose of the policy would be to ensure that our electronic fund transfers are completed in a manner that conforms with Minnesota statutes that govern electronic or wire transfers to pay claims or make investments. For your reference purposes, I looked on the office of the state auditor, Minnesota office's state auditor website, and one of their avoiding pitfalls memos dealt with electronic fund transfers, and there's some specific provisions that they, or I guess policy controls that they require, and so I included those in here. It would be delegating on an annual basis a designated person that has the authority to make the electronic fund transfers. They would require that the dispersing bank would keep on file a certified copy of the delegation of authority. The person initiating the electronic transfer has to be identified. The person initiating the electronic transfer must document the request and obtain approval from the designated person before initiating the transfer. Written confirmation of the transaction must be made within 1 business day after the transaction, and a list of all transactions made by electronic funds transfer must be submitted to the governing body, which would be the City Council, at your upcoming meeting. So all of that was included in our proposed City of Eagle Lake electronic funds transfer policy. And then along with it, looking at other cities' policies, and also the League of Minnesota Cities has some guidance out there as well, and that's how our policy was adopted. I did send it to our auditors, and they said as long as it complies with the requirements of the Minnesota Office of State Auditor, we should be covered. So with that, I would just recommend that the policy be adopted.
I'll make the motion that the policy is adopted.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the electronic funds transfer policy. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion would say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. All right, then moving on, utility rate discussion and recommendations.
Included with your packet is a letter from Shannon Sweeney. He's with David Drone Associates with some utility rate recommendations for water, sanitary sewer, and stormwater. Mr. Sweeney was not able to attend tonight's meeting due to another meeting commitment, but I did visit with him over the phone, a remote meeting regarding the recommended rate increases, and we discussed that I would present the information. If there's additional questions, he will certainly follow up and answer those questions. Just in summary, right now, our water utility is making debt payments on the 2021 bonds, and we're also looking at a water tower rehab project for 2023. And that project alone is estimated to cost approximately $500,000. So the impact of these expenditures will require modification to our water rates. And after doing analysis of all these factors, it's recommended that we have a 5% annual increase for years 2023 through 2026, and then a 3% annual increase for years 2027 and 2028. Then going on to sewer, based on inflation operating costs, it's recommended that sewer rates be increased 4% annually for years 2023 through 2028. And then for stormwater, a 15% rate increase is recommended to cover debt service contributions for the 2021 bonds, and obviously operating costs are increasing with our requirements for being an MS4 city. So attached is an illustration of the projected monthly increase, and that's based on an average residential customer, which would have a consumption of about 4,300 gallons. And under this scenario, and using the 2022 rates, the overall monthly bill, which also includes refuse, recycling, and tax, would be about $96.76. If we factored in the recommended increases for 2023, that same bill would go to $100.16, so a difference of per month $3.40 based on the average residential customer that we're looking at on our usage data, about 4,300 gallons. And right now there's no increases projected for refuse or recycling in 2023. So basically I'm not asking you to consider adopting rate increases through 2027, 2028, because we don't know year to year. There could be things that come up. But what's recommended this evening is that you talk about your comfort level with the recommended rate increases, and if you're in agreement, I would recommend that we move ahead with the rate increase to take effect with January's usage that's billed in February just for 2023, and then we revisit annually because there could be some changes. But the advantage of if you would adopt it this evening would be I could still get it into the fall newsletter and give people a chance to have sufficient notice and make adjustments for those that may be on a fixed income or fixed monthly budget. So, and I also should note that in the information I sent to Shannon, I let him know that we're looking at increasing our staffing and a staff person in Public Works, and so there'd be an allocation that goes to stormwater, water, sewer, community development coordinator wouldn't have an impact on that, and police would not have an impact, but the other staff person for Public Works was factored into our operating costs. And then when you look at the water treatment plant, that's gonna be a whole separate thing because we're gonna be looking at grant and low interest loan funds for that. And that's a huge dollar amount, which we wouldn't even plug into this right now.
So Jennifer, if I can just ask a question off the top. So the proposal here is a 5% increase in water in 2023, a 3% or 4% in sewer, and then 15 for stormwater.
Right.
Do we know what our projected increase was going to be for 2023 anyway for those?
For a rate?
Yeah.
Nope, we didn't go beyond, so we've been doing rate analysis, but we did not have one for 2023 yet. Is that?
We didn't, I mean, like, did we have a set, we're gonna already go up 3%?
Yep, we didn't have that set, no.
So if we did nothing, our rates would be the same as 2022?
Exactly, yep. But the thing, and why I reached out to Shannon, because with inflation, operating costs, just more and more of these kind of unexpected capital, I mean, just different maintenance, repair items where, you know, we just need to start setting aside enough money to cover all of our operational costs and start setting aside some money so that we can absorb some of these unplanned necessary repairs that happen mid-year. If that answers your question.
Yeah, I just didn't know whether we had a yearly escalator already built in, or, you know, because like for garbage, you know, in our contract, we've got escalators and things. I just didn't know whether we did that.
Nope, since I've been
For
here,
ours.
we've done the analysis with Shannon, and then it comes to the council each year.
About historically, like, say 2020, what was, did we do 3% or did we?
Oh,
is
I'd
this
have
kinda
to,
Within the ranges that we normally do?
yeah, and oh shoot, I should have brought that with me. I don't have that right now. But it was based on looking at our operational costs and, we just kind of did analysis of what our needs are. So we try to maybe add some of those things in there where we're making sure that if we need, do we really need a rate increase? I mean, that was part of the analysis.
No, I would agree that we've got several projects coming up just to do with stormwater and water and everything, and also, like you said, the rate of inflation
Right.
and other things, and I don't think we want to fall behind and then, 3 or 4 years from now have to do 15%, just to try to get caught up, so making those small adjustments as opposed to one large adjustment every 5 years would be beneficial multiple ways.
Jennifer, when it was brought up with, garbage and recycling, I know they came midway through the year saying they were gonna put on all these fees for us. Has that changed, or are we in contract still?
Yep,
with
we have a
them?
contract with them, and what they're projecting for increase, I did review that with Carrie, and I looked at that, and we're fine, we're okay with that. Those costs covered.
I did just get an email today about a number of LJP workers quitting and things like that too, so I don't know where we're at in our contract with them as far as when we maybe want to look at another RFP for garbage collection services.
I've got it on my bulletin board in my office, I couldn't tell
Yeah.
you right now, but
It just sounds like they're just having troubles. So thoughts on water, sewer, and stormwater rate increases? Necessary evil?
I think we have to. I think we have to kind of keep, yeah. Like I said, it's either 3% now or 10% 3 years down the road.
Well, I like doing it just to the 1 year for 2023. Doesn't seem like such an ominous
Right.
piece. And I don't know, Jennifer, if there's a way to work on paying off the bonds at $50,000 a year. I think that's for City Hall and Public Works.
Right.
I don't know where we're at on timeline for payoff of bonds.
well, we did the refinance, last year,
Okay,
and if I had my budget for it, I could tell you how many due. Well, it's in the budget, I don't have it in front of me, sorry, but it has payoff dates for our debt service. So we could review that maybe at that special budget work session.
Sure.
I could review all that. And then I could also provide just for historical purposes of where we've been with rates, and how much we've increased each year. But I know since I've been here in the past, it might have been different, but since I've been here, I've worked with Shannon to make sure that do we actually need an increase and is this enough, or
right.
so we don't want to increase rates if we don't need to. I know that we haven't been doing a lot of sewer increases because we didn't feel it was necessary, so we don't want to just do increases to do increases. We want to make sure we can justify it.
No, I like the analysis that you did with, what the current operating costs, what the projected, upcoming projects and things like that, so we kind of do that every year. That way, like you said, if we don't need to bring something out, let's not cut us short in some of these big projects.
Any other discussion? Then staff's recommendation is to approve the recommended rate increases for 2023 for water, sewer, and stormwater of 5%, 4%, and 15%.
I'd make that motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries.
Mayor, can I interrupt? The answer to your question is 2028. I just found it in here. I didn't, it was in the letter from Shannon about when the debt service payments end for that $50,000 a year. It's 2028.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes in the past, we've jumped up our payments and paid off some of those bonds early when possible to free up that debt service money. So, I mean, we can also look at if there's possibilities with that. All right, we'll move on then to item number 6, Drug and Alcohol Testing and Drug-Free Workplace Act.
All right, so included with the packet that went out on Friday was a proposed drug and alcohol testing and drug-free workplace act policy for non-DOT employees, and then also included that was sent out today is one for DOT employees. So that's basically the employees that are required to have a CDL, which is our public works employees. And then what kind of prompted this was working with Spencer and the fire department and the Minnesota Valley Council of Governments doing a review of their policy. Working with the COG, they recommended that we make sure we update our drug and alcohol testing policy because of some recent legislation that was passed with legalized cannabinoids or THC. And the city attorney also drafted a letter, which is included in the packet, advising to that same effect. So then after looking at everything, realized that we have a little blurb in our policy that covers drug and alcohol testing, drug-free workplace, but we don't specifically have the policies for non-DOT and DOT. And I think we're required to have those policies. So you don't have to take action tonight if you don't feel comfortable, because I know it's a lot of paperwork to read. I just want to at least present it to you, let you know that the policies we'd be adopting would be basically taking the recommended policies from the League of Minnesota Cities, which have been reviewed and reviewed for compliance. And so those are the 2 policies that you have in front of you, but if you'd like more time, you certainly can table taking action tonight and wait until the following meeting. And then once adopted, we'd review these with city employees and they'd have to sign an acknowledgement form. And it'd just be part of our personnel policy. But basically in these different policies, it outlines the different scenarios in which you can do testing, and it's just kind of spells out different scenarios and what our processes would be.
Questions from the council? What's our current testing? I mean, we're not actively testing.
So right now, it's a good question. We test when there's a conditional job offer, but we're not doing random testing, checking driver's license, driving history for CDL license holders, which we would, per the DOT policy, which would go into effect. And so we'd have to get those programs in place.
Is part of is there a way to, if there's something suspected, that you can have a test done?
Yes, and that's,
Require
yep,
a test, okay.
absolutely, and that's another good reason to have a policy. We have the reasonable suspicion,
okay.
yes, and the kind of, like right now, we're not covered, we just have this really small section in our policy. This outlines, and I don't know if Chris has anything else to add, but that would help give us some guidance and prevent us from hopefully getting in trouble.
Yeah, it's a policy that's being put in place because of the changes in the law that weren't really necessarily well foretold to the cities and of that nature. It's probably, the next session is probably likely to change it again. But where we do need to take some action is that DOT has a 0 tolerance for THC. And we want to make sure that that's there, and then it's just a matter of how much you feel for having freedom for other employees to have those uses. I don't know outside of prescription that there's much use for that. And certainly we want to have them when they're doing on duties, but THC is a little bit, as John can attest to, it's much harder to try to figure out if somebody's affected by THC than alcohol. We don't have an easy test that just says you're over a certain limit.
Any other questions? I guess I'm just concerned a little bit about some of those things for employees that, I mean, if THC is legal, and if they're not DOT employees, where does that line come in if I'm able to use? And maybe yesterday I used, and today I'm working, and,
The problem becomes even a little bit more complex than that because it's still illegal federally. You know, they may have taken out the controlled substance parts of the statute or the federal law, but you know, marijuana or THC isn't legal even for prescription. And then we have prescription, then you have THC-8s, and you have some low-level THC-9 that are now legal. It's a hard line to kind of figure it out, you know, who's going to be affected by that or not. You know, I think federal law is pretty clear that anybody with a DOT license can't have none. Anybody with a firearm can have none, you know, and that's probably good distinctions. As to the other ones, that gets to be harder. You know, I think the recommendation is, you're right, we certainly don't want anybody who's impaired, you know, doing anything for the city, you know, but how do you make that determination? So it's something that needs to be, time will tell, I guess, is the best way of answering that.
but to be protected, the policy is kind of the,
We certainly want the DOT policy,
Yeah.
or have something to that effect put in place. So there's no confusion with those employees that, you know, even though it may be legal, you know, to have these gummies that we're not allowing, you know, that they have to comply with federal law.
and the only one we have in the packet there, Jennifer, was the non-DOT?
Correct.
The other one you emailed out?
Correct, yep.
No, for me, I don't really, I mean, I see a difference between DOT and non-DOT. But I assume Jennifer goes to meetings in a personal car, she's probably not DOT certified, but I wouldn't want her driving while impaired on city time, or Carrie's
Right.
approving, checks going out when she's under the influence, you know. I think that is just as important as public works or the police driving around town too.
Yeah, we're never gonna allow somebody to be impaired and drive a city vehicle, whether it's with marijuana or something else of that nature. The issue comes in is if somebody's testing, you know, for THC or testing positive to it, doesn't necessarily mean that they're impaired, the same way as testing positive to alcohol does.
And I think the problem too is you just don't know how long it stays with certain, you know what I mean? How you metabolize it. That's one thing we talked about.
There'll be plenty of court cases in the future that define more of this as we roll forward.
I think it's the legislature that's gonna have to define this stuff going forward. I mean, talking to local legislatures with this particular bill, I don't know that many of them had a really good, strong grasp of what they were doing. I think they understood the portions of it that were restricting advertising, and they liked those portions. I don't know that they understood some of the other provisions of what it was actually allowing. Yeah, the workplace or even the sale of gummies, it actually was an expansion of the sale of gummies, not a restriction.
And to also give you guidance, so the League of Minnesota Cities had recommended, or they made an update to their non-DOT drug and alcohol testing policy, just to kind of answer the mayor's question about, so we usually kind of defer to what the league recommends. So that's why they sent this out, saying that that policy has been updated to reflect the changes with the THC and
Right.
so forth.
But one of the changes that they're making is that THC is no longer necessarily considered a controlled substance, which it was before. So where we have language in there regarding controlled substances, it needs to be a little bit broader and treat THC as being something a little bit different than that.
Any other questions, comments? Are we comfortable in making a motion on this tonight, or would we want to table this for further discussion next month?
I would be comfortable moving forward, you know, knowing that the staff has done the research and with council and the League of Cities.
I was gonna say the same thing, I'd make a motion to approve it, knowing that as changes come up, we will amend and make changes as necessary.
So we want to approve 2 policies. One for the DOT employees and one for non-DOT employees. So if I can just make that clarification.
I make a motion to approve the 2 policies, one non-DOT, one DOT.
All right,
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. The last item is another policy, a fire department policy.
Well,
You want to give any background, or?
I will probably just, poor Spencer, I'm sorry, you've sat here for 2.5 hours. I will turn over to you. I know Spencer has really led the way on getting this policy updated. The fire department does currently have a policy. This has kind of revamped it. And just real quick summary, Spencer and I did meet with Sheila with Minnesota Council Valley, Minnesota Valley Councils of Government. She reviewed it, provided feedback, and thought it looked good overall.
Yeah.
And next step was to bring it to the council, so I'll let Spencer take it from there.
Yeah, so main reason for wanting to update our policy, I think the last time we did it was either 2011 or 2008, one of those years. So, I mean, obviously a lot of stuff has changed since then. The current policy that's in place, I think was 3 pages. The policy that's in front of you guys is over 30 pages. So we just want to be more clear on a lot of stuff within the fire department. Couple of potential issues have come up over the last couple of years, and it was kind of a gray area in, hey, how do we act on this? So that's what kind of drove us to try and get this revised with the goal of now, hey, if we have a minor change that we want to make to a portion of the policy, we can do it, not have to redo our whole policy. So a lot of stuff, there's clear job descriptions or position descriptions in there. The drug and alcohol policy that Jennifer just referred to is in there. There's a driving policy in there. So just a lot of stuff, and you can kind of see through the table of contents there what's all included in there. I think the big thing for both Jennifer and I has probably been the leave of absence and how do we deal with that with certain individuals not meeting or potentially meeting their meeting requirements, training requirements, and how do we handle that in order to be fair to other department members and residents of the city. So that's what kind of drove this. Questions at all?
The other firefighters like it too?
Yeah, so it's been, like I said, it's been a long process, probably going on 1.5 years, 2 years of working on this. So we actually had a small committee that worked on it. There's some of us that spent a bunch of time on it, and then it has been presented to the department a couple times. What you see in front of you has been presented to the department already, knowing that Minnesota Council of Governments was okay with that. Everybody on the department was okay with the current policy that you guys see in front of you now, so we just wanted to get it to you guys for your feedback and approval.
I looked through it and I think that if your department, if the fire department is happy and approves it and has done a lot of work with it, I think it's a good thing.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the new fire department manual.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
Thanks for putting it together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there
It was a lot of
plans on an annual review, or how are you gonna keep, you're gonna try to keep this current, or?
Yeah, so that's the
It's
goal,
tough, right?
is to definitely try and keep it current. And this was the longest part of it, is to try and get most of this up to speed. Granted, hey, there's probably some stuff we have to go back and, add to it already. But the goal is to go back, have everybody read through this completely. There's a few acknowledgements we're gonna want signed to have in there. And then, hey, keep going back and reviewing this policy, as it's now a live document that I have saved in my computer finally.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? That carries.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Spencer.
Spencer.
That's all of the new business that we have today, and so we will move on to the city administrator's report.
All right. As part of our MS4 program, the city is responsible for completing education outreach with the public. One activity that we coordinate is storm drain stenciling, and we have an activity coming up on Wednesday, September 14th, from 5:30 to 7:30. And we, because there's so many storm drains in Eagle Lake, we just picked the Eagle Heights subdivision. We thought we'd meet at the park and kind of keep it contained to that area as our starting point, and then we can increase our storm drain stenciling program after that. But right now, we've got about 15 volunteers signed up. We've got volunteers from the Eagle Lake Area Lions Club and Girl Scouts. Myself, someone from Public Works will be on hand, and our rep from ISG. And we're gonna kick it off with some pizza, quick educational, why it's important to keep pollutants out of storm drains, give instructions to volunteers on, what we're gonna be doing within that 2-hour time period. And we've got supplies that we've identified that we need, and Public Works is coordinating picking those up. So hopefully it goes well, and that activity, we'll try to get a summary in the newsletter and let people know about it, raise awareness too. I can't tell you how many times, you see somebody just blowing grass clippings out in the street, and that's really important that people be educated that that's not okay, and you gotta sweep that up afterwards. Moving on, fall cleanup is scheduled for Saturday, October 15th at the park, 8 o'clock to noon. We have, I worked with SPX, and they have a nice depiction of how that should flow. I think at our spring cleanup, it worked pretty well. We didn't really have a backup. We'll have a police officer on hand to help direct traffic again. I just want to give you an update on the Fox Meadows development following the most recent city council meeting and the completion of the AAW. We've now received applications for rezoning and the preliminary plat. Public hearings are scheduled. Notices have been sent to the newspaper and affected properties. And there's hearings set for September 19th at 6 o'clock. And developers agreement hopefully will be on the council agenda for the October 3rd meeting. I was contacted by Dan Rothschild with Mankato Township. He asked me about the city taking over the portion of the gravel road on 598th from Peregrine Avenue, so right kind of where the pavement ends to 211th Street. Brian and I, with Public Works, talked about the pros and cons, and we really don't see any advantages to the city accepting that road unless you have changed your mind since I talked to you. Okay, and so I responded back that just talking at the staff level, we didn't really see any advantages to the city accepting that portion. The other portion they asked about was when you get on 211th, the minimum maintenance road from where you'd have 598 at the end, kind of by the cemetery, and then go over to where you have the leaf collection spot, that would be an area, the city's been maintaining it. It's currently under, apparently, the ownership of Mankato Township, so they would adopt, I believe, or they'd send us some resolution for the city to go ahead and take ownership of that portion of the road. And did talk with Brian and didn't see any issues with that. So I don't know if you guys want me to pull up on a map what that looks like. I don't have anything from the township, but I can show you exactly where we're talking about here.
Are they having issues with the usage of it, or what prompted this conversation just randomly?
I don't know. I don't know if it just somehow came about. I do know that, oops, just 1 second, sorry about that. I'm way over on, there we go, got it over here. So over here, we have had some complaints from a resident on the condition of the road here, so I don't know, maybe they've had an uptick in complaints on that gravel road portion, but I know, Brian, you might be able to get some more background on that.
Yeah, I don't know if they have new employees also. We've always worked with Ron Cords. I don't know if he is still with Mankato Township or not. But, for the last 30 years, it's always been different until just lately when we heard from this new guy that, oh, that's Mankato Township. So the little stretch by the cemetery there that goes to Peregrine, since I've worked here, it's always been the city's responsibility. But then the township said, no, it's theirs, so that's fine with us.
So you've always plowed this stretch right
Yep,
here?
we've always plowed down to the T. But if, yeah, like I said, if it's theirs, they can have it. Cause it's been nothing but a pain, and it's gravel, and we don't really have the equipment to grade it. We've always asked the township to do it, and they've done it for us. But that was the deal too with Ron Cords, you know, it's always been a deal where, oh yeah, we'll do it for you for, you know, cause for friendship,
So
you know.
basically, the township thought it was the city's road, and the city thought it was the township's road, and now
Yeah.
somebody's.
Yeah. And then the 211th, that was always kinda, it was kinda half and half in a way. But with my understanding before, it was always kinda down the center. But now it looks like it's, the west half is township and the east half is the Eagle Lakes, but, so I don't know where, if anybody wants to survey it or what, or if it really matters.
No, it was just random, so I didn't know if there was some big issues that we didn't know about, or.
Yeah, like I said, we've always dealt with Ron Cords, and now I don't know if he's even around the township anymore, but this is a different guy that contacted us, so. But like I said, for the last 30 years, it's been that way.
And I
Until
just,
now.
thank you, Brian, and I didn't want to, I made it very clear, I'm just staff, and that's it, if he needs to go to the council, we'll go to the council, but we couldn't see any advantage to the city taking on this road if it's not ours, because it's gravel. I'm sure as soon as the city takes ownership, there'd be an expectation it might be paved. There's a property owner that lives out here who's complained about the condition of the road, and should be referred to contact the township.
They probably don't like the dust because there's more traffic on 211 now that it's fixed up, so there's a lot more dust going around.
So anyways, well, I'll keep you posted on that. I'll just, I never heard back from the township after I responded, but I didn't want to be sitting on that. I thought it's not my place. I wanted to let you guys know about that, so I'll just keep you posted if I hear anything else. And then, just upcoming staff trainings, I thought it was important to let you know we've got an upcoming safety training for all staff on September 20th. And we're going to be meeting with a rep from the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust, kind of our loss control consultant. So we're going to have a staff meet with him. And then after that, we're going to have a mandatory MS4 training for all staff, and then an end-up training for field staff. And then we've got another our annual safety meeting coming up on the following Thursday. So there may be times where we're going to have to just let the calls go to voicemail or put the front window down, but it's not going to be an extended period of time. It's just we got to get these trainings done. And then, as I mentioned, fall newsletter, that'll be going out at the end of the month. Just a reminder about our upcoming special city council meeting for the preliminary budget and levy. We have to get that certified to the county auditor on or before the 30th. So with that, that's all I've got.
Did you want to talk about the community forestry?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm not done yet. So I was reluctant to apply for another community forestry member simply because of just kind of feeling overwhelmed right now with some of the other projects we have going on. So I did not apply for one, but then I got contacted by the city of Lake Crystal, and they do have a forestry person, and they don't have 40 hours worth of work. And so I said, you know what, let me run it by the council. And I did email the AmeriCorps saying, I said, if we could get some help with somebody that could go around all of our stormwater ponds and assess our vegetation, kind of give us some recommendations or a maintenance plan, maybe that's something that could help us for, because our stormwater ponds are overwhelming. And so they're going to get back to me and just kind of keeping up with some of the same things we've had them doing already, with just giving us recommendations on new trees to plant. We've done the tree inventory. We do have the rain garden down at Lake Eagle Park that's a little bit overgrown, and I think that would be a really good project, and then buckthorn too. But my only concern that I expressed to the AmeriCorps is the wintertime projects and being able to come up with enough stuff when they can't be out in the field. So, so if you're okay with it, and like I said, I was reluctant, but I think that if we have something that could help us, maybe there's some things that we could have them do. I guess I would just ask for the blessing to have another community forestry person for a third year.
Well, if we get some benefit out of it, I think it doesn't cost us anything,
Right,
right?
it doesn't
So,
cost us anything, so.
I mean, if we can come up with specific targeted projects and, make them focus on that, I think that would be good.
I mean, if they could, I would find significant value if they could go to all of our stormwater ponds and give us an assessment of the vegetation. To me, that would right then and there be worth it, because we don't have the time to do that, so that would be great.
Would they be able to do any of the MS4, like public education pieces, like for the newsletter or things like that? Would that be in that
Probably
realm?
not MS4, but they can do more like, public outreach education as far as, those related things
Right.
with the community forestry, so
They
absolutely.
can do the rain gardens, they can do
Yep.
Emerald Ash Borer, which is one of the things I was gonna suggest to the council. If you're looking for things for them to do over the winter months, looking at your policies regarding tree and tree diseases isn't a bad idea, they did that for like Clifton.
And the reason they can't do the MS4 is because we have to specifically name the staff person who is in charge of that minimum control
Yeah,
measure.
I just didn't know,
Really fussy.
are some provisions of public education and things like that.
Yes.
Okay.
MS4 is a whole nother.
Yeah, it's a whole
can of
nother
worms.
monster, isn't it? So.
Well, would anyone like to make a motion to authorize the administrator to bring in another forestry service member?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I guess I would just question, would this just be the part-time again like we did the last time?
Exactly. If for some reason, not to interrupt you, but if for some reason we would be able to get a community development coordinator, we may have to move this person either into the council chambers or go down to Public Works. And I think, I'm sure Public Works would be fine if that person had to report to the shop, I think, right? So they could find a little desk space.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Any council member updates? Then I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.
It's only 2.5 hours, not full.
2:41.